It's the most important choice you'll make before you even step on board. Choose wrong, and your dream vacation could turn into a noisy, motion-sick nightmare. Welcome to Empty Nester Cruises, where we help couples like you trade travel stress for serenity. I'm Eric, and after helping hundreds of empty nesters plan their perfect cruise experiences, I learned that cabin selection really can make or break your entire trip. Today, I'm answering some of the questions I hear most often from couples like you, who finally have the freedom to travel on their terms, but feel overwhelmed by all the options. If you've worked hard for decades and want this trip to be special, not stressful, you're in the right place. Let's talk about types of cabins. 4 main cabin types you'll encounter. Interior, the most affordable option, often 30 or 40% less than an ocean view, but no natural light, which some people find disorienting. Perfect for the travelers who use their cabin only for sleeping and showering. Some things to consider. Are you claustrophobic? Do you need natural light to help you wake up? Nothing wrong with interiors. We've gotten them several times over the years. It's a little bit different, waking up in the dark, going to sleep in the dark, always being dark except for when you have interior lights on. Ocean view cabins. These include a window, sometimes a porthole. Most of the time, those windows are non-opening. They're usually 10 to 15% less than balconies. They're kind of a good middle ground between price and experience. Some things to consider. Is seeing the ocean important, or do you just need light? My wife and I, we like ocean views because you might not have the greatest view in the world, but when the sun's up, when it's light outside, when it's dark, that kind of thing. It's kind of a good middle ground. We want to go on as many cruises as we possibly can with X budget, but we don't want to be in the dark all the time. So it's kind of a good middle ground. Balcony cabins, these are our personal favorites, but they are more expensive. You have this great most cruise ships, you have a great outdoor space, a patio to enjoy morning coffee or an evening glass of wine, or just sit out there and relax, read a book. Now, they are 20 to 30% more expensive usually than like an ocean view, but you get this private retreat from the crowded public areas. Now, they are not always quiet and serene. There are other cruisers who they enjoy their balconies differently, and they can be loud. Sometimes they'll have their music out there. So, it's not always that quiet retreat you want. But some things to consider. Will you actually use the balcony? Everybody says, oh, that's a great idea. But then, there's so much to see and do on the ship and in port that you use it for like 5 minutes. Is it worth it? The ultimate suites, the largest accommodations on the ship, they usually have separate living areas. They often include some exclusive perks like priority boarding, specialty dining. The newer ships have their own private bar and restaurant for people that are staying in the suites. They can cost 2 to 3 times more than a balcony. So when you consider them, if you consider them, do you need extra space? Are those perks worth that premium to you? Things you have to think through. Okay. So something that's not quite as obvious as what type of room, location. If you're a first-time cruiser, particularly, even a lot of seasoned cruisers don't really understand why this, that, or the other thing. So there's when you're looking at the ship, there's arguably 3 sections of the ship. You've got forward, which is the front of the ship up at the point. You got midship, and then you got aft, which is the back. If you're prone to motion sickness or a new cruiser specifically, you want to go midships. You want to go, you don't want to be all the way in the front. You don't want to be all the way in the back. You want to be kind of in the middle. Why? Because that's the least amount of motion. Also, it's the closest to the facilities, closest to the elevators, closest to the stairs. So it's not a, arguably 10-minute walk to get all the way to or from your cabin. If you're up in the forward part of the ship, you're going to feel more of the movement in rougher seas. If you're in the aft, in the back, you're going to have great views, but you could feel and or hear the engine vibration. And honestly, you're going to feel some movement in rougher seas, not as much as up in the front, but you're going to feel it. So if you're concerned about motion sickness, remember, stick with midship, and the lower the deck number, the better. So that, vertically, decks are going to be 1 through 17 or 16 or 14, depending on the ship. If motion sickness is an issue, you want to go as low in the ship as you can. For the same reason, you're not going to feel that motion as much because the ship doesn't move. It doesn't appear to move as much. Now let's talk about some noise zones that most people want to avoid. Okay. You don't want to be directly above or below entertainment venues. Like you don't want to be a deck above the club or immediately below the pool deck or right next door to a busy bar. Most people like to avoid being right on top of the elevators or stairwells because lots of foot traffic. And arguably, some people, when they come back to their room after enjoying a night out at the club, aren't quiet, so they could wake you up. So it's kind of a balance between all these different factions, these options as to where you want to go. You don't want to be near the anchor, which is all the way up in the front, because, when you pull into port, they pretty much always drop the anchor, even if they're up at a dock. Try to stay a little bit away from the crew service areas, just because the crew are coming in and out and they're moving things around and they're making noise. Mobility issues, accessibility considerations. For people that are concerned about that, you want to be near the elevators. Yes, you're potentially sacrificing some noise issues, but you don't want to have to walk from the elevator, 300 yards to the end of the ship to get into your cabin. Okay. Proximity to restaurants. Again, if you've got mobility or accessibility issues, you're going to want to be near an elevator, preferably on the lower decks, so that you can get in and out quick and easy. If you desire to have easy pool access, well, then you're going to want to stay near the pool. Upper decks might be worth consideration because, in general, the higher you get, the less common areas, less activity areas you're going to come across, with the exception of the pool deck. But there's a lot of options that you have to think through. So your priorities as empty nesters, they're going to differ from families or younger travelers. In general, you're more concerned with privacy. You're more concerned with quiet when you want to sleep. Sometimes connecting rooms have thinner walls on that common wall. So you might want to avoid getting one half of it, or one of the connecting rooms. See, a lot of times, the higher you go, higher decks, the fewer families you're going to come across, because a lot of times those 3 and 4 person cabins are kind of in between the pool and the promenade decks. Obviously, adult only ships or adult only sections of a ship offer more quiet opportunities. Now, that's not to say you're not going to have a bunch of drunken dogs, but you're not going to have screaming kids or less screaming kids. Balconies, they do provide that private space, not necessarily a quiet space, but a private space, so you can just sit and reconnect with your significant other that you're on the cruise with. Have some good old conversation, a cup of coffee, a bagel for breakfast, and just relax, just the two of you. The advantages to suites is they have a lot of times they have separate living areas. So if we have different sleep schedules, i.e., I stay up late, my wife goes to bed early. I don't know, when I come in, I crash on the couch, or a lot of times it's a pull out. So I might pull it out so that I could sleep there instead of waking up my wife because I decided to come in later. Some things to consider. How much together time do you want? How much personal space do you need? And try to balance that. It also depends on the experience. Is this a once-in-a-lifetime trip, or is it the first of many? If it's a once-in-a-lifetime, my suggestion is splurge on that suite. Really make it a once-in-a-lifetime experience. If it's, if you're, we're going to go on a cruise a year or 2 cruises a year, well, then, sometimes financial not constraints, but financial considerations, say you get, a couple of balconies, or I'm sorry, a couple of ocean views, so that you can do those 2 cruises in a year, arguably for only a little bit more than 1 balcony. And another thought, are you going to spend time in your cabin, or are you going to experience the port? Because, there are some people that on certain port days, think Cozumel, Nassau, maybe even St. Thomas or St. Martin, that they've been there, done that 19 times. Well, they decide they want to sleep in the cabin or just hang out in the cabin. So the things to think through, a good travel agent like me will walk you through a lot of these questions, these concerns, to help you find that right balance between quiet and cost and activity level and all the other options. There's a couple of cabin selection strategies that I've learned over the years from helping other people. The sandwich deck strategy. Choose a cabin with passenger cabins above and below you. That will help avoid noise from public areas. And it's often more consistently quiet location because you got nothing but other cabins around you. The extended balcony hack, cabins on the hump or corner of the ship, because ships don't really have corners. They kind of have humps like bends. Oftentimes those cabins are going to have larger balconies. Same price category as standard balconies, but they'll have larger balconies just because of the way the ship is designed. You'll find those a lot of times by looking at the deck plans online. They'll show you that it might not say extended balcony, but the balcony will be obviously larger. So you get more outdoor space without the price tag of a suite. Now this one, you've got to think this one through, but the guarantee gamble. So you can get a guaranteed cabin. So you're booking a category, not a specific cabin. So you can book a guaranteed ocean view. What that means is you lose control of the location. The cruise ship will pick your cabin for you. The upside, you save 10 to 20% on the cost. So you're giving the cruise line the ability to fit you in where they need you. Some people will gamble with this because it can result in an upgrade. Say there's 200 ocean view cabins available on a cruise ship. They've sold 210. You book a guarantee. If there are no ocean views available, they're going to bump you up. They never bump you down. It's part of the contract that if you book a guarantee stateroom, if there are none available at that category, they will bump you up to the next category. So you could end up in a balcony. I mean, it's going to probably be an obstructed view balcony, which is basically an ocean view, but you actually still have a balcony. So if you're a little bit flexible, if you're flexible with where your cabin's located, that's possibly a way to go about it. Obstructed view. More and more ships are created a category called obstructed view ocean view or obstructed view balcony. What that means is there's a lifeboat or there's some functional part of the ship that is blocking at least some of your view out your window or off your patio. They're discounting those because less people want them because they can't see the ocean as easily. So they're knocking 15, sometimes up to 30% off to get people to book it. Again, your choice whether that's sufficient or not. Obstructed view balconies are fine with me because I'm not looking for the view. I'm looking for sun. Is the sun up? Is the sun down? And so an obstructed view, it doesn't block the sunlight. It just blocks the view. And sometimes it's just a little bit of a blockage. So just options for you to think about. So when it comes time to choose, consider these 4 factors. 1, budget reality. Be honest about what you can comfortably spend. Don't go into debt to get a balcony versus an ocean view. It's, my opinion, it's just not worth it. Number 2, cruise length. Longer cruises might justify more comfortable accommodations. So if you're doing a 10, 12, 14 day, if you're doing a repositioning, 30 day, things like that, that situation would make me want to upgrade my cabin to a larger cabin. So for those, we would probably do a balcony. If not, maybe a junior suite. Because you're going to be in that same, when you're in a cabin, a regular cabin for 7 days, it's okay. You can arguably put up with anything. When you're there for 12, 14, 18 nights, it starts to wear on you. So the longer the length of the cruise, the more likely I would be to suggest an upgrade. Or number 3, the itinerary. Port-intensive cruises mean you're in your cabin less. So, if you think about it, if you're on a 7-day cruise and you got 4 port stops where you're off that ship for 6 to 12 hours of each of those 4 days, you don't get as much time to enjoy that balcony, that cabin, So save a little money, maybe go one category down, since you're going to be offshore the whole time. And then number 4, personal priorities. What would ruin your trip? Noise, motion, cramped space, those kinds of things. If you're a light sleeper and being woken up 2, 3, 4 times a night is going to ruin your cruise, then that's arguably the number 1 priority when it comes to cabin choice. If you're very prone to motion sickness, that's your number 1. Figure out what that number 1 is, satisfy that, and then a lot of the other things fall into place. So remember, the perfect cabin isn't about what's most expensive. It's about what creates the experience that you want. After decades of planning around everyone else's needs, this trip is about you. So get the right cabin for you. The right cabin isn't just about where you sleep. It's about creating the perfect home base for the freedom you've earned. If you found this helpful, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you're ready to plan your perfect empty nester getaway without the stress of figuring it all out yourself, visit emptynestergetaways.com, where we handle all the details. Until next time, remember, you don't just deserve a vacation, you deserve one that's perfectly tailored to this exciting new chapter in your life.